Ladies and gentlemen, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're based. Today, we have with us a very special guest. For me, he needs no introduction, but nevertheless, we're going to give him one. He's Oscar Martinez Tapia, the academic director for the the Political Science program at IE University in Madrid, Spain. Prior to that, he was an assistant professor at the Universidad Antonia de Nebrija, academic dean for the Marbella International University, and a professor for the Universitat Oberta de Catalonia. Overall, he's a very passionate academic. He will be joining us shortly and we'll be discussing the main differences of the Poli-Sci program at IE University versus its main competitors, as well as what the role of such a degree is.
All right.
So, Oscar, thank you so much for joining. I've gone ahead and introduced a little bit about you. The main aim of today's discussion is, for future leaders to sort of listen to and get some inspiration about how they want to do what they want to do, especially if they want to focus on political science.
All right.
But before we deep dive into that, I just want to give the floor to you for you to take a minute and introduce yourself, what you do, how you do it, and we can take it from there.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much for having me, Alex. It's a real pleasure to be chatting with you here casually, informally in July, summertime. Now I'm Oscar Martinez Tapia. I'm Spaniard. I'm a political scientist by training, also a sociologist. Now I did my undergrads in Madrid at the Complutense University. Then I did my master's in international relations at the University of Manchester in the UK. In the late 90s, you can imagine that Manchester was a very cool place, a lot of music, a lot of like the scene was pretty 20th century. Anyway, so after that I started teaching and I my first position was at the University of Lund in Sweden. Then I went back to Madrid and I started my PhD at my home university, the Complutense, only to realize that it wasn't a good, I'm sorry, it wasn't a good time, and it wasn't a good time because no one was really doing what I wanted to do, which was more like party politics. So I did apply to transfer, and I transferred to UC Irvine, University of California in Irvine, in South LA. I was there for 2.5 years. Flip-flop kingdom, LA. Love it or hate it. I did love it because my commute wasn't too long. But then, like I got tired of LA and I ended up applying to Harvard, and I transferred again to Harvard, and I was at Harvard for 3.5 years in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And then I went back to Madrid, started working for the government, speech writing for the vice president of Spain. This is back in 2004, 5, 6, 7, before the big crisis, Lehman Brothers, 2008, and then I quit when the crisis approached, and it was a good call. And then I went back to teaching to school, and I've been to a number of different schools in Madrid and the US. Eventually landed at IE University in Madrid for the last 10 years. And that's me. Okay. And I have recently been appointed the academic director of the Bachelor in Political Science, which we will be launching this coming September. And we're super excited about it.
That sounds fantastic. It's a good degree to have. It's a degree I finished too, so for me, it's always a degree that's close to my heart.
Yep.
Uh, but before I ask you about the program itself, let me just ask you: do you prefer active politics or do you prefer the academic route? Because you've jumped between both.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, there are not many political scientists actually involved in real politics,
Hmm.
and we do have a lot of lawyers, we do have a lot of businessmen, but political scientists, maybe we know too much about the system, so it's much more frustrating, because I remember when I started working for the government, I thought I could change the world and uh, and
We all
uh,
did.
and it ended up being a pretty exciting job because you're close to power, and power is aphrodisiac, and power is it's hot. But yeah, no, I mean, I think teaching politics is different than doing politics, certainly.
So I've jumped a little bit back and forth myself. I actually wanted to be a little bit more involved, and I did it because of the Lehman Brothers crisis and
Right.
the aftermath it had in Southern Europe mostly. I ended up doing mine instead of doing it in some brand name school. I don't regret this, by the way. I ended up doing it in Malta,
Okay,
and I was
that's good.
heavily involved with the government of Malta back then because they needed a lot of staff and a lot of people, no matter where
Right,
they came from.
right.
Uh, and I really enjoyed it. A lot of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs work, and it was really, really different to the political science that you learned in school, right? So you go to
Yeah,
school and the curriculum is up or down standard. You know, you learn about Huntington, you learn about soft power,
yeah. Fukuyama, whatever. Yeah,
Fukuyama sticks and carrots, yeah, the whole thing. And then
right.
depending on which way you want to go, I liked a lot of political philosophy, so I went down that path.
Right. Well, then, if you like political philosophy, there's nothing for us in the real politics these days, because of course there are not many philosophers in politics, and that's something that maybe eventually we want to change a little bit with our program, in political science at IE. We're going to go heavy on. I do myself teach political theory, political philosophy. I also teach comparative politics and institutional design, which is another thing that we think at IE that it's going to go big in the next few years because a lot of democracies need to improve their institutional design, and a lot of non-democracies will have to hopefully transition towards something remotely close to a democracy, so they would need an institutional engineering out there.
Talk to me a little bit more about the program itself, the bachelor's in poli sci. It's a great bachelor's to have. You're gonna focus a lot on the philosophical aspect of it, but I mean the road to politics is a very heavy road and it's a very burdensome road.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I mean,
heavy lies the
yeah,
crown. You know, if you've seen the movie.
yeah.
uh,
Interesting. Yeah. Now, I mean, we do have an approach at IE, which I think is pretty unique. Again, I think that IE started out 50 years ago as a business school. Again, and the business school, it's a big leg of the school, and it has huge reputation internationally, as you well know. So the business side is there because we do have a lot, and when I say a lot, I mean a lot of contacts, with institutions worldwide. All right, now, and that's governments, that's NGOs, that's international organizations, that's private companies, consulting. The network of IE, which is at our service, it can only balance, the more theoretical
mhm.
approach, that we want to, give to our students, and we want to dive into the soul of politics, and then they will discover, the I guess the fake, of the real politics, I mean, and I say this. Obviously, the moment today, politically talking is complicated one. So we need much more philosophy. Even Greek philosophers like Plato, Aristotle's, all those guys that you know well. But also Machiavelli, Hobbes, John Locke, Marx. Like I teach Marx to our students big time. I mean, and that's the balance that we want to get. Like on the one hand, academically we're very solid, we're very like theoretically oriented, we are very, I mean, we got like worldwide um you know uh, uh, faculty class, first class, and then on the other hand, the internships that the guys will be doing through their summers, through their study abroad, through their different activities out there, that will teach them the real thing. So that's a little bit of the approach that we are gambling on.
It sounds to me like you want to give them soul and then you want to put them in the industry. Or, well, in
Yeah.
political science, because I wouldn't call it an industry, to bring back some soul into the industry.
Well, I mean, like if you are raised reading and thinking critically and questioning, sometimes not even just outside the box, but against the box, and then you hit the real world, something must remain with you, like at least when you're sleeping at night, you put your head to the pillow and think, okay, maybe I should have some principles. Maybe I should do this for the people. Maybe there is something that we can instill in you that will be the game changer, and we hope so.
It's very, very Aristotelian of you.
Yeah, of course. Okay, now Greeks are there like too long ago now for my taste. When we call the Greeks, of course, their work is atemporal. Okay, now, but yeah, I mean, there's some modern political philosophy that is also very attractive. Okay, now I'm thinking about Civic. I'm thinking about like Saim Namir. I'm thinking about Habermas. I'm thinking about a lot of like Hannah Arendt in the 1960s, 70s. There's a lot of like modern political philosophy. I mean, you don't have to go back to the times of the Greeks. Like you have it available right now.
So my trip with political theory started off with Greek theory, and I was a big fan of
Right.
Aristotle, mostly because of Alexander the Great and how he taught him. So I try to see it from the perspective of what you teach rather than
Yeah.
what they wrote. So I was a big fan
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
Aristotle, and then I spiraled downwards to becoming quite Hobbesian.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay. Well, that's a ride for you. Okay. Maybe you discovered reality, and Hobbes and Homo homini lupus and war of everyone against everyone. Well, I
Mother
mean,
gave birth to twins, myself and fear, etc.,
yeah. I
etc.
mean, exactly. I mean, well, I do think that. I mean, Aristotle's. If you think about Aristotle, his father was a doctor. All right, now, so he's very scientific, he's very scientific and not as esoteric as Plato, perhaps, which is more, living in the world of ideas. Okay, now, and then as you transition towards the Middle Ages and Renaissance, like English Revolution and the Glorious Revolution, etc., and then the combination between, I mean, Hobbes is important, of course, okay, and probably is one of those misconceived political theories because it's very
Just like
complex.
Machiavelli. Just like Machiavelli.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, now you talk about Machiavelli, the prince, and you think, oh well, it's kind of simple. It's better to be loved and hated than loved, or feared than loved, and but it's not. I mean, the prince is probably his poorest piece of work.
Mhm.
Okay, now I mean he is a fantastic political theorist, but it's a little bit like Marx with the Communist Manifesto. Like
100%.
it's just a pamphlet. A
It
prince
is.
is a pamphlet. Probably Machiavelli had to be Machiavellian himself to stay alive. All right, because
So
he lived in a
that's
very difficult time.
so that's exactly. I mean, I read The Prince, and then I deep dived into who Machiavelli was, and then I realized that the analogy you put is the correct one, right? So The
Mm.
Prince is exactly like the Communist Manifesto. It was a CV resume for him to show to the
Yeah,
Borgias or the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Medicis
And there's so much
to
more.
prove
There's so
himself.
much more to Hobbes than just fear and don't trust anyone and like stay isolated and people are bad by nature. Then if you think about it, he's contemporary. I mean, when Hobbes were coming down from his time, John Locke was raising. I mean, 1689. The Glorious Revolution is the turning point, and I think that's the transition between Hobbes and Locke. It's day and night, okay, but I mean it's not night. It's not. It's down more than night. Okay, now Hobbes, I esteem him, um, and I think like you got to be a little bit realistic in order to survive, that's for sure. Okay, but obviously now I'm more inclined to the idealistic, man is good by nature. Now, if you think about it, when John Locke was writing the two treatises of government, um, he would probably take a rest and say, "I'm going to take a little walk in London," and the people that he would see outside, it would not actually remotely be resembling what he was writing about. Okay, now he would probably see people choking on his own puke, dying on the street, peeing, smelling with no teeth, with like disabled. Okay, so it was very difficult to be like idealistic in those days. Like I mean, then the 19th century is the construction of the fiction of the people. Okay, now after the French Revolution, and yeah, I mean, this is you see, like in our conversation, you can distill, what we teach our students. Like we teach them a lot of context, a lot of like things do not happen in a vacuum. Okay, now they have a décoré, they have a context, historical, political, economic, demographic. Alex,
Mm.
think about the biggest migration in history. Okay, it's not Irish people to New York or Boston, or Italians to New York, or like the biggest migration in history is people going from the countryside to the city. That's the game changer. That's the
No,
game.
that is. I never thought
Okay,
about that way.
in
The
in,
Industrial Revolution, yeah.
I mean, think okay now. Everything changes. Okay, now in the countryside, you are very limited to what you can do. Okay, now obviously, like scientific revolution is going to help on the good side, but also on the bad side. Okay, now I always we spend some time in our class talking about prohibition in the United States. Okay, now imagine alcohol in the 19th century. Okay,
Mhm.
now because it's not just before the 19th century, it was like beer and cider and wine. Okay, now distilled spirits come in the 19th century. Okay, now
The good
whiskey,
stuff.
gin, well, good stuff. I mean, you
Mhm.
know that you are young enough, okay, as to know already when you are enjoying a good glass of Greek wine, and then you go on to a gin and tonic, the night changes, and the
Mhm.
morning, imagine the hangovers. Okay, now
Mhm.
in 19th century, and these guys did not have Gatorade. Okay, they did not have ibuprofen. Okay, they did not. I mean, imagine. So prohibition in the land of the free. Imagine. Okay, now how much Americans should have drunk. Okay, now for an amendment to the Constitution. Okay, to be passed. Okay, in the United States, because it could easily derail the whole republic project. Okay, now so again, it's just so many angles. Okay, so many angles, and all of them they deserve some time with the kids, talking, explaining,
What
reading.
about what about things like the Divine Comedy? So I've resulted that
Oh,
Dante's potentially my
yeah,
favorite. Do you
yeah,
dabble in Divine Comedy because it's not exactly
yeah.
political philosophy. It's a little bit of
Yeah,
a
yeah.
subsidiary.
But if you think about Dante, if you think about Boccaccio, Decameron, if you think about those kind of early Renaissance work, they were constrained by the power of the church still, especially in Italy. Okay, now
Mhm.
so they had to go around a lot of metaphors, like Dante's Inferno must have been, like Florence, at the time. Okay, now it must. So the real freedom does not come until the Protestant Reformation. Okay, now after, of course, the corruption in the church, and in my political philosophy class, we make them watch The Name of the Rose, the movie. Okay, now I mean the book is much better. Okay, Umberto Eco, but obviously there's so much that the kids can read these days. So the movie is just the transition between the Holy Inquisition, okay, having a lot of power. Okay, so of course Dante, Boccaccio, like even Machiavelli must have been about to die 100 times. Okay, now, and a little bit later, if you think about another great historical character that I love, okay, is Giacomo Casanova. Okay, Giacomo Casanova, the Diaries of Casanova. I recommend them to you, Alex, and to whoever is listening to us, because those are a very good account. You know, it's a little later, okay, 17th century already, almost on the 18th century. But again, my point is that all those writers could only say certain things in certain ways. Okay, now, and I think, obviously Italians have a mastery in, going around ideas without being revealing those ideas, and leaving all these, like meanings out there for whoever wants to take them. So yeah, fascinating time.
It is. It is. Let me ask you, because if we deep dive into the philosophical part, I think we're going to spend the whole hour just talking about philosophy.
Yeah,
So
yeah, we could.
let me redirect a little bit back. How do you guys combine in the poli sci program at IE theory, practice, and especially by integrating real world challenges? So Greece's migration, climate policy, AI. How do you integrate it?
Well, I mean, the answer to that is our experience. Okay, now, because most of us are not just renowned faculty. Okay, but I think there's a lot of common sense in the department. Like we putting together. Okay, now, and of course. There are many different ways of approaching immigration. Okay, and here maybe we can go on to ideology at some point, but clearly we are on the side of a more progressive
Mhm.
political science and ideology. Okay, so in that sense, we value human rights. We are certainly have the duty of putting into our students' brains the love for other people, okay, wherever they come from, whatever the race is, whatever their sexual orientation is. So we try to explain, we try to understand, and we try to discuss, and also looking at other perspectives. Okay, now which is also very important. Okay, now in class it needs to be an environment of tolerance, an environment of respect, but also an environment of provocation. Okay, now and then of course, I mean, education. We know that there's a lot of indoctrination in it. Okay, now I do have now two small kids, and I'm raising them, and of course there are all these kind of ideas that you can go for. Okay, now, but so of course. We trying to value justice. If you call it universal justice, I mean, maybe we are a little idealistic. But if you're not a little bit
Moral justice,
idealistic,
I would say. More of. It sounds like
yeah,
I is more of a moral justice kind of
yeah,
place.
yeah, yeah. I mean, then we do have a very good thing. It's just like, again, as I mentioned before, we have a very good position in when it comes to sending our students to good places for work. Okay, now, and for, I mean, we have an employability rate which is, tremendously high. Our students are involved from day one into our IE clubs. We have European Union club, we have Asian club, we have African club, we've got Latinos, of course, a
I've
lot of
seen it.
Latinos.
I've seen it. I've seen it. It was sent to me when I had the offer.
Yeah.
So I've seen it.
And then Alex, it's relatively simple within the complexity. When you put into the same class, say 40 to 50 students, 30 different nationalities. Okay, now it kind of comes out natural, like
Yeah.
uh like the kids have very different backgrounds, very different educational institutions that they come from, different approaches, and most of these approaches they come out in the discussions that we have. Okay, now think that in the BPS, the political science, we have gotten the school after some negotiation to normally our semester covers 30 sessions, all right, now for each of the 6 credits. Now we're going to do 35 sessions. All right. Now, those extra 5 sessions are going to go for debates, like students at the office of the professor with a coffee, doing some readings like they do in the good schools in England, for instance, like they do at Harvard, with their teaching fellows.
The
Um,
so-called tutoring, right?
right, right. Okay, now so it's more kind of monitored, close up environment that makes these students that perhaps are not so confident, to open up, okay, and to add to the conversation, and again, the I have to say, as a professor that loves the job, a lot of this had to do with the way in which we manage the classroom,
Mhm.
okay, and the way in which we inspired the students like inspiration, not just with charisma, but with the readings pick, with the things that you decide to, because imagine in political theory, you could just run political theory 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Yeah,
6.
yeah, it's how I got
No,
taught it, for example,
no,
and I just loved it and deep dived into it.
it
But
doesn't
some
finish,
of those things
like
it's just too tricky.
so again, there is a way in which you gotta trust the professional faculty and professors who are in love with the discipline, and they're obviously very knowledgeable, and they published, and again, it's a combo. It's a great combo, in my opinion.
I agree with you. I want to ask you a question, but it comes as a two-part question, right?
Okay.
What made me fall in love with political philosophy more so than anything else within the political science framework was the following question said by one of my professors. If you were a guard on duty
Uh,
and you were told to shoot anybody that approaches, and all of a sudden you see a child approach, would you shoot
mm,
that child? He's carrying something. You don't know what he's carrying. It could be a bomb or it could not be a bomb. Would you
yeah.
shoot that child? Yes or no?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't myself. Okay, now probably because I would not be able to be a guard with a gun in my hand with that kind of. But again, this was already explained by Hannah Arendt, on the trial, of Nazis, in Jerusalem, like and and she talks about the evil out there, and how a lot of these guys that were following orders were not questioning, the orders. Okay, now the banality of evil, as she put it. I do think that people need to question sometimes orders, even if that means that um, uh, discipline and hierarchy is not really maintained. We do have other cases which are equally interesting, like for instance, doctors who deny certain operations to certain patients based on their, theoretical, ethical. Yes. Okay. Now come and say hello to Alex. Okay. Now,
Hey, hey,
hello, Alex. Hello, Alex. I'm sorry,
I,
Alex.
it's okay, no problem,
I
no
have
problem.
to kiss her. She's going to go to bed now. All
No
right.
worries.
Venga, un besito. Venga, vete con Andrea. Bye bye. Ciao, ciao. Good night. Um, so again, it's a tricky question, right? Because questioning orders is not such a popular thing, especially in
Mhm.
the military. Okay, the example that you give. Okay, now there's a very good movie also explaining this. It's called A Few Good Men. A Few Good
In it.
Men. Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson. Okay, now, military is a very special corp. It's a very special place very special people, but not everything goes. Not everything goes. All right now, and I think the ethical component of orders is it's an important one.
The reason why I'm asking, and this ties up to the second part of that question, is because I feel that the generation before me would have had ethical concerns into it. When we were asked that within our classroom, the majority of the class that had lived through the tough times of the Lehman Brothers and the subsequent crisis
Right.
leaned towards yes, shooting.
Yeah.
And it seems that the younger political scientists are approaching closer to the ideals of the previous generation rather than my generation.
Mm.
So my question to you is, how do you think basically what are the key differences between new political scientists that will come into this program or will come out into the industry versus my generation or the generation before that?
Well, I mean, one of the big differences obviously is technology, right? And everything that has to do with technology, right? Now, in terms of ethics and in terms of uh,
Morality.
morality, okay, now I do see young people and my generation, I'm 50 now or 52, and I'm getting old and regrettably, but I am. And
Don't look like it.
yeah, well, thank you, Alex. You're too kind. Now I do tell my students that they are so much better than I was when I was them. All right now, and in many respects, I can sustain that argument. These guys are even freshmen, I mean, they are at a different place, much more mature, already knowing, already playing the field, of almost like adulthood and being very, very conscious and very much based on purpose, right? I mean, and of course, younger generations, they do have a tough cookie because when I was you and when I was a student in university, global warming was just something that was not really there. All right
Mm.
now, so it's just going to be a matter of survival. It's going to be a matter of extinction. Okay, and unless these new generations do something about it, this is it. Okay, now so I do think that the newer generations, not all of them, of course, we also know that a lot of them are feeling the call of extreme right-wing parties, especially in countries like Spain. Okay, now in Greece, you also have, like a good version, a good or a bad version of this, sort of box in Spain, Golden Dawn, is it in
Golden
Greece?
Dawn, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, all those guys after obviously, Tsipras and Varoufakis and all those guys that raised so many expectations and so many hopes in your country, and then I think the new generations are going to do much better than the older generations. And if I don't believe in that, I would not be able to do my job,
Yeah. Let me ask you, because you mentioned Golden Dawn and Box. Do you think the rise of extremities, polarities, for me,
Yeah.
even Tsipras was a polarity. But if you see these, what do you think caused them? Is the failure of the EU as an institution the reason why? Do you think there needs to be changes on a different level before we can potentially discuss the eradication of this polarity? Because if you go
Yeah.
that out directly and banish them, you're
Yeah.
just giving them more power. I've seen that, for example, with the banishment of Golden Dawn, other
Yeah.
subsectors have been given power.
Yeah.
I feel it's the same way with any extremity. I think we need to focus a little bit as political scientists to addressing the issue. And what is the issue? Is it the stagnation of the economy? Is it the stagnation of decision making? Is it the lack of personalities in decision making, like the good old
Yeah.
days, like the
Yeah.
good generations?
Well, it's a combination of a lot of different things, but let me tell you what the mother of all evils is: inequality. Okay, economic and social inequality. Okay, now here
I
I'm
I
going
was
to
going to
take.
say mostly financial, but go on. I'm listening.
Yeah. But it's not just that. There's also inequality of like expectations. Okay, here, I mean Thomas Piketty in France, and his work on the capital in the 21st century initiated a debate on inequality. Now, if you look at the numbers within the European Union, in your country, in my country, okay, in my country, 1 out of 4 children live below the level of poverty. Okay, now that's bad. Okay, and of course there are some parents to these children that cannot provide for a good heating, for good food, for a good education, for a good health system. All that is creating a lot of discontent. Okay, now
Mhm.
again, it's a much more complex phenomenon. I mean, we normally, I do teach a course in the fourth year at our school called Nationalism, Populism, and Retro-Utopianism. Retro-Utopianism, which is a very interesting concept, and basically the idea that everything was better back when everything was worse. All right, now this nostalgia,
Yeah,
sort of wave, okay, now which people start thinking about, I don't know, in Greece, I would imagine, like things were better during the dictatorship of the colonels,
yeah.
like in Spain, things were better under Franco. Is obviously things were much worse, especially for minorities. Sorry, but the expectations of people, like also thanks to late capitalism, have been raised, okay, to a level. There's a very interesting TED Talk called The Paradox of Choice by
Hmm.
sorry, by a psychologist in NYU, New York, called Barry Schwartz. And he talks about how much choice, the enormous choice that we have, doesn't liberate us anymore.
Hmm.
Okay, now some choice is better than no choice, but it doesn't follow that a lot of choice, okay, now gives you happiness, etc., etc. Now it's the peculiar problem of rich societies. We have too much choice. Now, especially like the lower strata of the population. Okay, now remember, Adidas is telling you impossible is nothing. Nike is telling you just do it. Okay, now slow is too. I mean, f fast is too slow. Okay, now all those things are making people think that they should have more than what they have. Okay, now especially places like you think about Eastern Germany. Okay, now the Eastern lander of Germany after reunification. Okay, now this is where alternative for Deutschland votes are coming from, basically. All right, and these are people that thought that capitalism, all right, now and democracy was going to raise their
Standard
life
of living.
level, and it has. Alex. Okay, now it would be stupid not to think that we live in the best world in history. Okay,
Yeah,
now, materially speaking,
yeah, yeah,
is
yeah. 100%.
it's
100%.
not the same to be poor today than to be poor in Dickens' England, okay,
Hell
or
no.
19th century, okay, where ch child mortality was almost 40%. Okay, now and imagine, okay, now before antibiotics and all that, but at the same time, all this material wealth, okay, had made us expect, okay, much more, okay, from our lives, and of course, okay, now a lot of people are caught, okay, now in this idea that, of course, if you think about meritocracy, for instance, okay, we are told that liberté, égalité, fraternité, and meritocracy was going to put us somewhere good in our lives. And we know that meritocracy had a lot of problems these days, okay? Because, one of the main, think about this piece of data, Alex. Inheritance, wealth, inheritance, all right,
Hmm.
when your parents are leaving to you and to all the generation like you, okay, now makes more millionaires than business. Okay, according to UBS, the Swiss bank. Okay, inheritance makes more millionaires than business. If that is the case, of course, meritocracy is over. All right, because all these rich kids, the nepo babies, all right, now they're just gonna be rich and they don't even know why. Okay, now imagine the people who will not inherit. Okay, now these guys will be fighting. They will not find any justice on that just because your parents are rich. And in a lot of cases, you don't even love your parents, but you want the money. Okay, now the situation is getting to a point. Now in Greece, I'm sure like if I'm correct, Greek people are the ones in the European Union that have more money abroad. Okay, now and most of that money, okay, whether it is in Cyprus, whether it is in Malta, whether it is in Luxembourg or the Netherlands or Switzerland, it's money that doesn't want to pay taxes. You see,
Yeah, yes. There's a couple of counter arguments to it. The counter argument is that it's a heavily taxed society, but unlike the Nordics, you get no benefits out of it. So
oh, yeah, of course, because you need less corruption, because you need better people. You see, like everything is very fragile. Like the whole myth about especially fraternité, okay,
doesn't
solidarity,
exist.
like we are brothers and sisters. That's your Hovesian side. You see, like your Hovesian Thatcher, Margaret Thatcher. Who remember one of her famous sentences was, "There's no such a thing as a community. They're only families and individuals." Okay, now a community is something that you heavily need to believe in, because like rich people are the only ones who pay taxes. Okay, now poor people don't pay taxes. Okay, now pay very little taxes. Okay, or indirect taxes. But so there is, if the institutions and the democracy cannot redistribute wealth, we are in a big problem.
So I think that's one of the main differences between Spain and Greece, right? So in Spain, and I've seen this every time I've traveled to Spain, you still have some essence of a community.
Mhm.
Vis-a-vis Greece, you have zero essence of that community. So that existed for me after the period of the colonels of the junta,
Yeah.
um, up until let's say maximum 2004 2005, and then it slowly declined.
Oh,
So
yeah, yeah,
you don't really have liberty, because if you don't slave away for 12, 13, 14, 16 hours to one specific corporate,
yeah,
then you're unable to make ends meet, and it's very hard for you within a failing market to find another job. So you don't have liberty,
yeah,
you don't have the sense of community, and you definitely don't have equality. And the most best case example is the last two scandals that have hit Greece, and that is one, the incident with the trains, where there's 51
yeah,
young student souls that died, and you can't get any form of justice out of it for whatever
right,
reason that might be. And the second one is with the current scandal that had to do with EU funds in farming. So you had specific
yeah,
families,
yeah,
families of the prime minister, ministers, et cetera, that were involved in delegating huge amount of monetary funds from the EU for agricultural land that didn't even exist,
yeah, yeah,
to close relatives, et cetera, et cetera. So you find yourself in a situation where, and I'm not blaming either side, to be honest,
right,
where the rich don't want to pay taxes because, well, the rich, even the middle class, doesn't want to pay taxes because there's no value put to your money. It just disappears within the system, right? You don't get the infrastructure, you don't get the health, you don't get security, you don't get anything.
yeah,
And then you have a system itself that is corrupt and is abusing the monetary gains. And it seems like Greece is going in a dark circle. So for me,
yeah,
Greece is a very, very poor example of what the South can achieve.
yeah,
Spain, Portugal, Italy, Malta, on the other hand, are very good examples of what the South of Europe can
yeah.
achieve.
Yeah, yeah, I think you were right, and obviously you know your country much better than I do, and it's a shame. It's a shame. Okay, now and of course the European Union sending the men in black and the troika to Greece is not probably helping. Germans are German, and these are not so easy to digest in the south of Europe. Of course, okay, but you have to think that this is one very good reason why we need to teach political science to the leaders of the near future. So these guys, they think in a different way the people, about their people, about their brothers, their sisters, their fellow citizens. I mean, because you guys have such a great country and beautiful people and beautiful everything. And you cannot just like pin it together, okay? Now, which is kind of puzzling. Okay, now so next time, I mean, whenever I have a Greek in class, which is not very often, unfortunately, we do have a lot of faculty. Greek
Hmm.
faculty, okay, now a Greek faculty, a couple of very good friends, Nikitas and Evangelos, they are teaching at our school, and yeah, these guys are kind of skeptical about like a lot of different things, and it's about recovering the faith in democracy. Otherwise, some other people will come with other easy solutions that will never work.
I'll take it a step further. So for me, there's no economic model that could work in Greece at the current moment. Whether you decide to approach full-on capitalism, you
Mhm.
need radical change both in the public
Yeah.
sector, in healthcare, in pensions, et cetera, and you don't have the ability to do it. If
Mhm.
you want to adopt a system of social democracy close to the Nordics, which I think, by the way, is the most appropriate system for Greece,
Mhm.
uh, then also you can't implement it because you have an abuse of the system. There's no care for the community, as you said.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I,
Education, Alex. Education, that's the key. Is the only
but
key.
if you're educating, then it's going to happen in 1 or 2 generations down the line. It's not
Well,
going to be immediate.
like Rome wasn't taken in one day. Like I mean, like better late than never. Like I mean, remember that at the beginning of the 19th century, there must have been a lot of people, and when I say a lot, I mean a lot, that would think this, fraternity is bullshit. Like this community that we're building together, we the people, imagine we the people. Okay, now this is a construction, it's a social construction, and it's a
Constitution is a beautiful.
it's
It's a
a
beautiful piece of work for me.
absolutely, and it's a feeling that you need to cultivate, and that you need to promote, that you need to, and for that, I'm afraid that you gotta be generous. You gotta be generous, and I know that asking rich people to pitch in big time is not the only solution. Okay, tax the rich is not the only solution. Of course, it might sound very good, but and if you tax the rich, you got to make the rich get something in return. Like if you think about the United States, which is pretty bad at the moment, okay, as it is. Um, it's the paradise of rich people, but rich people do get return for their investments in society somehow by getting the names of the library. They're getting the names of, like getting a little bit of a promotion for the philanthropy of very rich people. And I think it's a difficult combination of things that need to put together. But you see, like we know the theory in political science, we know the theory, we know what would work, don't we? But then we need to convince a lot of people that that's the way to go. All right, and of course we need, as you mentioned, a good political class. Political class. All right, now I feel that now in the European Union, for instance, there are not like brilliant leaders.
Hmm.
Macron wanted to be another Louis XIV. Um, the new chancellor of Germany is this guy that, is lacking any charisma. Well, Meloni in Italy, well, Italy is certainly different, always flirting with fascism.
She does
Okay,
have charisma, though. You got to give her that.
she does have a personality, that's for sure, and presence, and she does have, a good act together. Not my kind of act, but she
You're
does.
100%, but she does have it.
She
I'm
does have
sorry to
it. She does have
interrupt you.
it. I mean, the same with Trump. I mean, you kind of disagree, and I certainly disagree. it's a little difficult. Maybe Trump, Berlusconi better than the comparison than between Trump and Meloni, but you know, he does have something that rally people around him, and that's where leaders do, whether we like them or not.
So this is a thesis of mine very recently, and I've seen it both within my corporate experience and I guess I've applied it sort of to the world. And the thesis goes that you no longer have these strong personality leaders that will lead, whether it's Chirac or De Gaulle or whoever it is, whichever side of the spectrum it is.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
don't have these leaders that will do one, two, three. You more have these mediocre leaders, and incorporate. These are the leaders that will go into a meeting and talk to you about growth when there is no growth, and play around that way. And you see that on a political level as well, within leadership in countries and in supranational entities, so the EU.
Yeah.
My thesis is that until that changes, and you actually get people that have hands-on experience or some drive to have some impact, you won't be able to change the situation as is.
Okay, now that's why you gotta come and do the political science degree at IE. All right, now we'll put you there. We'll put you there. We'll teach you well. I mean, I agree with you, of course, that you know, different times in history are probably marked big time by the kind of leadership and personalities, you know, that they were out there. Okay, now whether you're talking again, you know, you might talk about democratic leaders, Helmut Kohl in Germany, okay, now De Gaulle, Mitterrand in France, Felipe González in Spain, you know, there are, okay, now sometimes in which even you know, non-democratic leaders, you know, they also can, you know, like make some changes in the society, hopefully for good. Okay, we're not talking certainly about Putin, but we can understand why Russians are yeah, voting for him or Turkish people for Erdogan, you know,
Mhm.
because it's identity, you know,
Yeah,
identity,
yeah,
which
it's
is
that
another.
firm sort of notion.
I know that, yes, you know, there's, I mean, you know, I don't know if you consider, you know, Papandreou in Greece. I mean, those are old socialists, you know, like from the 1980s, 90s. But yeah, I mean, since Obama, okay, it seems like we have not been able to produce, you know, leaders with strong personality that are attractive. Now think about Pepe Mujica in Uruguay that just passed away. You know, like I mean, those are very exceptional people in history, and
It was. It was. He was
our
exceptional.
mission is not to make them so exceptional. I mean, it's to produce, you know, like more leaders like that, human leaders, you know, like people who can understand their people, their voice, and they can have a little bit of common sense, which is so bloody uncommon these days. You know, so you know, again, if you're in my class, maybe you take away a little bit of that.
Hopefully, hopefully. Oscar, coming back a little bit to the class and to the poli sci program. You're looking at your students, right? And you're responsible for the bachelor's in political science.
Yep.
What kind of civic leadership do you want your students to embody in the future? You said you don't want them to be exactly as these guys, but you want them to have an impact. So, what would be
Yeah.
like three basic civic leaderships you would want your students to come out of your class with?
Well, I mean, of course, it's if I had the formula, I would already be the Nobel Peace Prize. But yeah, I mean, if I have to give you three components of a good leader, first one would be humanity. Humanity. Okay, now think about Nelson Mandela, you know, for instance, you know, like how he got the guts to pick a vice president, you know, who was white when he you know, became the president of South Africa in 1994. Now, humanity is one of them. Another one, of course, is a visionary. Visionary. Okay, now good leaders have a vision of their countries and their nations and their people. Okay, and they are followed, okay, based on the vision that they have put together. Okay, now so humanity, vision, all right, now, and then also tolerance. Okay, now because especially in a context like today where polarization is the word catch word that everyone's talking about, but no one seems to be understanding or explaining or wanting to get off, their echo chamber and their little world. So we do need in I guess Americans would say people who cross the aisle,
Mm-hmm.
all right, now to try to understand the others and try to get as much support, even if, even if he might not be ideologically close to the ideals of some of the voters that have not voted for him, but at least he's doing something for other people and he's explaining things well, and it's having a logic, like and I mean power and politics and government should be like a little bit of a domino sequence, where the piece before, okay, helps the next piece to like lay down on the next one, and it should be a little bit of a chain, okay, not all these isolated decision making, which is meant to favor only your people and, like do the worst for the others. I don't understand that, but again, it's difficult. It's difficult to see young people with those qualities. That's probably why we're going now onto this, old men again. Okay, now testosterone power. Hobbes would be happy certainly with this. Okay, now, but yeah, maybe another reason. You guys got rid of the monarchy, like back in the 70s. Our queen is Greek. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Sophia. All right now, and you see, it's interesting how monarchies, including the Scandinavian countries, which are like constitutional monarchies, also Netherlands, Belgium. All right now, of course, Great Britain, but it's interesting how when there are not good leaders, we all develop some sort of a daddy issues with like the kings and the queens, like there's some heavy daddy issues, heavy need of guidance and leadership, and we need to start building up these guys, almost manufacturing good leaders. And for what I see in my classes and in my school, it's possible. It's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of training and a lot of will. But that's our mission, man. That's our mission.
Well, to be honest, IE has done fantastic in any field it has touched up until now. And it's very, very safe to say, I mean, excluding the rankings and everything, because the rankings are there to prove it. But if you look at it holistically, it's one of those universities that has managed to be very, very present across many industries.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
fantastic both for its students. So, on the majority of the cases, I do know a couple that might be quite controversial, but in the majority of the cases, you have the potential to raise leaders, and that's good to see of an institution because not all institutions are like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it isn't perfect. I mean, no institution is perfect. I mean, tell me about it. I spent 3 years at Harvard, and it's almost perfect, but it's not perfect. Now, um, but we do have means. Okay, now it's a private institution, but we spend a lot of money on scholarships for people who are of good value. Now, think also that right now the situation in the United States for universities and students, foreign students going to the United States, is not the best. Now, so we are hoping that we can capitalize on some of these guys that
Hmm.
wanted to go to the United States. Also, of course, bringing some faculty, some good faculty that are willing to just, escape the United States environment for a little while. Okay, now while things kind of calm down, hopefully soon. Um, and yeah, I mean the prospects are exciting. As a friend of mine always says, we have a bright future if we can survive the present. Okay, now,
Wise words.
so let's go step by step, and let's start in September 1st with our first cohort of freshmen who would certainly have to drop a lot of their prejudices. They will have to be open to be surprised. They will have to be willing to work hard and willing to think critically because there's no other way. There's no other way. That's what universities do, and that's what we do.
I think you should be proud of what you guys do. The work the AI
Yeah.
does is fantastic.
Yeah,
Let me ask you.
give me a few years, and then we can have another kind of revival chat. Perhaps once a year, and then I can tell you how the program is progressing.
Yeah, maybe in person too. You never know.
Oh, inshallah, inshallah.
So I have two questions for you because we're running a little bit on time. The first one is, um, what do you think political science education will look like in 10 years from now, and then in 20 years from now?
Uh, um, 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 I will be too pretentious if I tell you that I know. No one knows how the world will look like in 2 years. So, telling you how political science will look in 10 years or 20 years will be a little bit too much. But I will give you an answer. I think personally, not just because it's my field of expertise, I think the world would need a lot of institutional engineers. All right, now to when I say institutional engineers for the viewers who are watching us, I'm talking about peaking between presidentialism and parliamentarism. I'm talking about picking a majoritarian electoral system or a proportional representation electoral system. I'm talking about federalism versus unitary. I'm talking about one chamber versus two chambers. I'm talking about rigid constitution versus flexible constitution. I mean, all those choices matter. All right now, and the good news is that we know, okay, now which of those institutions are tailored, okay, for whichever society is out there. Okay, now I mean think about this, Alex. Democracy does not come in just one blend.
No,
Okay,
it doesn't.
yes, no, Norway is fantastic, but so is India, despite Modi right now. Okay,
Sure.
so is Japan, Alex.
Yes,
Japan,
sir.
Chile, Canada,
Yes.
okay, South Africa. All right now. So like you can design democracy a la carte. A la
Hmm.
carte. This is what we're talking about. Okay. And I hope
See,
I'm raising the interest of some of these guys who are watching.
I have a question about that because it's also been a thesis of mine in the past. But do you
Uh,
think, for example, that democracy a la carte has failed in the Middle East?
Well, I mean, certainly the Middle East had not found the institutional
Reference.
design. Okay, now certainly the Middle Eastern countries in general, Arab societies, they normally go for presidentialism because they have a long history of big men in power, authoritarian. Okay, so presidentialism is normally a good choice. Now, a president is stronger than a prime minister. Okay, you have to think about that. It's more executive, it's more top
Mhm.
down, is faster, etc., etc. Now, but I mean, if you think about Lebanon. Alex. Okay, now neighbors of yours. Okay,
Yeah.
now down south. Now every Lebanese. I know that it is not in an ideal situation, especially since the explosion in Beirut. But if you think about it, most of the Lebanese people will tell you that Lebanon is a disaster. Now
Mm.
I'll give you the other view. Okay, now for a multi-confessional society like Lebanon, okay, now to keep a democracy running on and off, but running, okay, since 1989, the end of the Civil War, okay, and the Taif Agreement, that's institutional design for you. Okay, now, well, I mean, Israel obviously is a parliamentary democracy, all right now, but yeah, Syria. Okay, now, I teach at the masters in international relations at our school, and I just finished the course on sources of political instability. And we do go big on institutional design. And I ask them to find, I mean, for final paper is a project of a country that needs institutional reform, or a country that, a couple of guys did Syria. Okay, now say Libya, Egypt. Okay, now we're expecting another Arab Spring at some point soon.
Yeah.
All right. Now,
I agree with that. I
if that
believe that.
if that's the case, we will need people that you call political scientists, okay, like you, okay, now that would be called in and say, okay, now I need a design, an institutional design, okay, now from you, and you need to explain to me every single decision, all right, now institutionally based, that you are taking. And then there's no magic formula, but there are a lot of things that political scientists can do for the world, which the world does not know about. Okay, now no one knows what a political scientist do. Okay,
Mhm.
now because we don't do the politics, we don't do. I mean, we might design them, we might participate, we might be advisors, but a big chunk of what we do is very silent, and it's very unknown. And our mission is to make it known now. So I'll be teaching in the second semester comparative politics to our students, and then we will go very heavy on which society needs which institutions, and then give it a go.
That's a hell of a topic to discuss.
Absolutely. Okay, now so let's stay tuned, Alex.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Hope. Again, I mentioned this offline, but I do have the offer, and if I manage to make it, then that would definitely be a topic that I would like to sort of look into.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, let me know if you need any references, for funding in our school. I'm sure someone from inside can help.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that. And in closing, if you have to give one piece of advice to younger generations that are listening right now, other than go do the poli sci program at IE University,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
would be your advice?
Ah, keep hope. You
Hope.
know, yeah, keep hope and stay human.
Okay, great. I think it's best to close on that message then.
Yeah,
Uh, Hope and stay human. Oscar, I appreciate you taking the time to speak to me. Thank you so much for this. Hopefully, at some point, we'll get to work together in the future.
yeah.
It was great talking with you.
I'll be happy to help Greece getting a little bit out of the hole. Believe me, if you guys take me to Athens for a few weeks, I'll be enjoying myself because I love you guys. I love your food. I love your people. I love your streets, your noises, your language that sounds very much like Spanish phonetically, of course, it's a real pleasure to talk to you, Alex, to put a little bit of perhaps common sense onto all these, discussions out there.
Yeah, yeah. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you. All right. Stay well, man.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this was our season finale, right? And we stopped off with a great mind in political science. Now,
once these come out, I pretty confident that there will be a lot of voices going around, especially around the controversial topics that we discussed. We'll start kicking off season 2 recordings shortly. Of course, we'll get these in September, which means that by that time, hopefully, we'll have better equipment and we'll be able to facilitate more person-to-person discussions rather than online discussions. With that being said, I thank everyone that has watched so far. I thank those of you that will watch so far, and most importantly, I thank those that will comment on this both positively and negative, because there's no reputation better than bad reputation, to be honest. And from that point onwards, I hope we have managed to impact some form of lives. I hope the world has come to understand some very, very basic things from this. Like most people are very anarchic in the way they're governed in corporates and society as a whole. There are some people with hopes and dreams out there, and those people that have those hopes and dreams should not kill them for any reason whatsoever. I hope whoever listens to this understands the meaning behind it and stays on their course, their true course, despite what the sirens might be whispering on the side. And I wish you all the best and a fantastic summer, and see you in September.